Hi, and welcome to this iOS video. Today we're going to begin talking about some of these p-listable classes that we talked about in the discussion. And the first one we're going to talk about specifically is NSArray. We'll set up a very simple user interface here. We've got a label and we've got two buttons. And the buttons are labeled previous and next. And I wanted to show you what I did with these buttons. The previous button, I've set the tag value, and let's see here. The tag value we can use to distinguish our buttons, and I'm looking for it, and you're probably seeing it before I do, but I've set the tag value to 0 on the previous button, which is the default, and also set the tag value to 1 on the next button. And the reason I did this is because I'm using a single handler to activate both buttons. The button touched method responds to both the previous button and the next button. And then in the button touch method, I'm just going to distinguish between which button was clicked by inspecting the sender's tag value. Tag is a property of sender. Now this started out as an empty application template. Files owner has been made to be view controller, and furthermore I have a zip file called view, and files owner's view property is this view. I also have an outlet called display, and it's just the label. And of course, if I look at my properties, I'll see that I have my IB outlet label. I also have a property to hold an NSArray called word list, and of course this is a strong property, not a weak property, because this is not an outlet. It's not a subview of the main view. This is something that we do want to have a retained count of 1. And then I've also got a property here called int current word, and integers, C primitives, are always assigned in their setter semantic parameter here. And then here's my button touched header method. All right, now I want to show you something. First of all, the first thing that happens when this view controller is initialized is its initWithNibName and bundle method runs. And remember that that is actually run from the app delegate application did finish launching with options when I instantiate the view controller. So self.viewController is viewController alloc initWithNibName view, which is the nib file, and then the bundle of nil, which means this current bundle, this application's bundle. So now when initWithNibName bundle runs, I'll get rid of this so we have a little bit more room. All I'm going to do is set that current word property to 0. Then in viewDidLoad, which is a delegate method that runs when the view finishes loading, I'm going to set selfDisplay.text, which is our IB outlet, the UI label, to the object at the index of 0, the current word, 0, in our word list. Now, if word list does not exist, it needs to be created. Just by making a property of an NSArray called word list, it doesn't actually create it. What happens is that word list is initially equal to nil, no object at all. So we have to create it. The most effective way to actually create this is to do it in its getter. So self.wordList, this, by virtue of the fact that we have self.wordList, this is going to call wordList's getter. So we have created a overridden version of wordList's getter. And of course that's going to return an NSArray. And this says if wordList is nil, if not wordList, then wordList is equal to an allocated NSArray, and then NSArray has a special init method called initWithObjects, and I can give it the objects that I want to put into the array. There are 5 objects here. The NS strings 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then it's terminated by a nil. Nil is not an object. It is a flag that says this is the end of this NSArray, and it has to be there. And then I return word list. Why don't I say self.wordList here? Well, because self.wordList is going to call the getter. And so what will happen is this will continue to loop. So what we're doing here is we use the ivar, the property name without self, to initialize word list to an NSArray with these 5 strings. So when the application runs, displays text is going to be equal to the string, the NS string 1. Finally, let's look at our button touched method. The method handles both buttons. The previous button, remember, has a tag of 0. The next button has a tag of 1, so we inspect sender's tag in a switch statement. And if it's 0, it's the previous button. And if current word is greater than 0, we do this for array bounds checking. If it's greater than 0, then we set displays text to the object at the index in word list of minus current word. If we use the decrement operator, remember, before the name of the property, it will pre-decrement it. And if we use it afterwards, it will post-decrement it. So here we want to decrement current word before we use it as an index. And that's exactly what we've done here. In the case of the next button, we make sure the current word is less than the word list count, the number of items in the word list, minus 1. And if that's the case, then we can go ahead and pre-decrement or pre-increment current word and use that as the index into word list. And of course, that's all there is to this. So if we run, we see that the first element in the word list is displayed. If we click on previous, it doesn't do anything. But if we click on next, we start going through the word list. And if we're at the end of the word list, of course, it doesn't do anything. And then we can get the previous element in the list and so forth. Now, the reason we've used the count, obviously, here to check our bounds is that if we add an element to this array, and let's just come in here and add, should have done that after the comma, and add, say, 6, comma, nil, save. And if we run this again, it'll go all the way out to 6 before it ceases to function. Okay, good. Now, NSArray is one of these p-listable classes, and there are many of them. We can get information on this by holding down the Option key on our keyboard and then clicking that NSArray. And this tells us a brief description. It also shows us where it's declared, and we can go to that file. And we can also go to the class reference for that object, for that class. We can also go directly to the header file where NSArray is declared by holding down Command and clicking it, and that will take us to the header file. Now we can see that the only thing a NSArray actually does, the interface, the full interface for an NSArray is declared right here. It has 2 methods, count and get me an object at an index. But here we see some funny looking syntax. It says that I'm adopting protocols. I'm adopting NS copying, NS mutable copying, NS secure coding, and NS fast enumeration. And there are methods declared in these protocols, and we're going to talk about protocols and delegation in Unit 3, among other things. There are methods in these protocols that are declared that an NSArray is capable of responding to. And then also, we see a bunch of other declarations here, and we have used count and object at index, but we see another bunch of declarations here, and these are grouped together in something called a category, and we're going to talk about categories in Unit 4. Well, there is a category on NSArray called NS Extended Array, and that category contains these method headers. There is another category And I have to scroll down quite a bit. So we can see that NSArray can actually do a bunch of stuff. There's NSArray creation. That's a category on NSArray. There's also NSdeprecated. And whenever Apple deprecates methods, they put them into a category called NSdeprecated. And that is get objects, and that's an unsafe method, as we can see. And then there's also a declaration here for a class called NSMutableArray, and it has a category, NSExtendedMutableArray. It has a category called NSMutableArray creation, and there is nothing deprecated in a category as far as NSMutableArray goes. So we can see that we can quickly, very quickly, get information about what an NSArray can do by looking at its header file. And we can also get much information about the NSArray itself, class, by going and clicking option, click, and then going to its class reference. When we click on this link, it will bring up the organizer, and it will be on NSArray, and it will give us all the information that we want. So here's the documentation. There's an overview. There's adopted protocols here. There's all of the methods, and then each method has a description along with each property. Okay, thank you very much.